Welcome to the Sage Planning Solutions Podcast. Join Brad Marshall, Patrick Bennett, and Dominic Ruiz as we help you navigate life's financial obstacles and find financial freedom. We will cover the major pitfalls that can derail your journey to financial independence. Get ready to learn, grow, and prepare for your best possible financial future. Securities and advisory services offered through Ketteret Grant & Company Incorporated, a registered investment advisor and member FINRA SIPC. Ketteret Grant and Sage Planning Solutions are separate and unaffiliated entities. The information provided here is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered an individualized recommendation or personalized investment advice. Any opinions or forecasts contained herein reflect the subjective judgments and assumptions of the authors only and do not necessarily reflect the views of Ketteret Grant & Company Incorporated. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. This information is not intended to be a substitute for specific individualized tax, legal, or investment planning advice. Neither Ketteret Grant & Company Incorporated nor its registered representatives or employees provide tax or legal services. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice.
Welcome to the Sage Planning Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Dominic Ruiz, and I'm joined today by my two co-hosts, Patrick Bennett and Brad Marshall. Our podcast is designed to help you navigate the world of wealth management and make it easier for you to understand the complex financial jargon often used by financial advisors and the media. We cover topics such as long-term investing, risk management, portfolio creation, retirement planning, and other relevant topics. Our mission is simple: to make the complicated understandable. So whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting your financial journey, you're in the right place. Let's get on with the introductions. So Brad, please tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you end up in this industry and some of the things that you love about working as a financial advisor? And just please give the audience an introduction.
Well, my history is I grew up in a lower class, or I should say lower socioeconomic status home. And I remember in elementary school wearing my sister's hand-me-down clothes. And the embarrassment and humiliation of that sort of stayed with me for a long time. And I think early on, I internalized or decided that I was not going to be powerless over money and I was going to save myself and my loved ones sort of this struggle around money and finances. And as I sort of grew up thinking about it, it became a hobby and it became a passion. So I got into financial services in 97. I was an assistant financial advisor for almost a year. And then I became a financial advisor in 1998, and I've been at it ever since. The funny thing is, I started as a financial advisor in 1998, just before the tech crash, which was, as you know, one of the biggest crashes in history. And then what's funny about that is I worked for one bank brokerage program until 2005, and then I started my practice, which was just before the Great Recession, another one of the biggest crashes in history. So it's funny, the first 10 years in this business is actually called the lost decade because it's the only 10-year period in history dating back to the beginning of the S&P 500, where the stocks were down over a 10-year period. So my friends tell me whenever I buy stocks or sell stocks to let them know because they're going to do the opposite. What I love about this business is just bringing financial literacy, and I bridge the gap between people and their money, and I can help people have a healthy relationship with their financial plans, their financial goals, and with their money. And we strive to, as you said, make the complicated simple. So that's the thing I love, is when people feel powerful about their financial lives, then I feel like I've done a good job.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very impactful. I appreciate that. What about you, Patrick?
That was great, Brad. I grew up in a house in this industry. My parents were raised well below the poverty line. So I think maybe, Brad, there's some overlap there in terms of why my dad got into this. Big blue collar family. Our whole family really kind of was in the railroad industry. And when I say industry, I mean loading boxcars, right? And my dad is the first person to graduate from college, and one of the few probably from high school, let's be honest. And when he and my mom struck out to say, let's go down and move in the Bay Area, he got a job with Dean Witter back in the 60s. He went to work, started building a business. He got recalled back to the service. Vietnam War was still going on there. And his boss let him keep his job. And my dad had such a high degree of loyalty to that man and to the men and women that he kind of went through the ranks with, So I guess what I'm saying here is so much of my childhood was spent with the families of my dad's coworkers because we did everything together. There were camping trips and there were fishing trips and there was all these things. And so you grew up around it. So for any of you that have children, I was the rascally second child who was going to do whatever he wanted to do. I got out of college and I had this in my heart that I wanted to help people. So I got into law enforcement. And over the next almost 5 years, that was really sort of where I focused my attention. And when I sort of came to a crossroads with that career, my dad said, hey, I never really wanted to say anything, but I think you'd be really excellent at this. I've been around for a long time, and I think this would be a great calling for you. And like a lot of dads, the wise ones at least, they don't tell you what to do. They wait until you come and ask. I just asked about 10 years too late for him, but that was okay. And the one thing that is very gratifying for me in this job is you get to have real financial impact on people's lives. You know it, they know it, you guys can talk about it. There's ups, there's downs, emotions and honest communication are shared over the years. And I feel like my career has meant something. That really kind of what keeps me going.
Thank you. Great stories. This is Dominic. I got started in this business in 2003, started out as a teller. But before that, a little bit of history about myself. I hate saying it just because I really just dislike the phrase of humble beginnings because there's nothing humble about it. I'm pretty sure you guys could relate to that, but I think that's just a really nice way of telling people you don't have a lot, right? So grew up in a very financially strapped environment. But what motivated me is being able to see from afar, a couple miles down the street, I used to run cross country and I would run 7 miles a day and pass by these really nice homes. And at the time, right? I mean, you live on a certain side of the city and you run into a different area and you're like, wow, what would it be like to live in that area? So for me, it was motivating. And I think my lowest point as a teenager was having to ask my neighbor for bologna because we didn't have any food, which, I mean, I wasn't embarrassed to ask. I'm not a shy person, but I think for me, that was a turning point. Like, you know what? I never want to have to ask anybody for anything. So what can I do? So when I started working for the bank, that always stuck in the back of my mind. I'm like, what better place to work than where the money is? And since I already had a feeling of the stock market, like I didn't have any money to invest, but I would write down what I wanted to buy. I was like, okay, this is the best place to get some experience. And so I talked to my college counselor and I asked, what is the most difficult major at this university for business? She had told me, well, accounting. And I said, pluses and minuses, whatever, I can do it. And got into the accounting classes and it was a lot more than pluses and minuses. But I really enjoyed the process because that's what accounting is. It's a process. There's not a lot of complex calculations, but it's a very thorough process. And then I started working for the bank as a teller. And that gave me an insight into the regular average person and how they perceive money. And then I moved up to the ranks and then we got into the financial advisor training program at Bank of America, which that's where I met Pat in 2005. He had just came over from Smith Barney and his partner, Chuck, and I met with them and I'm like, what am I going to do to work with these gentlemen, right? And I think Pat was probably in his 30s and Chuck was in his 30s. I'm in my early 20s. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to look up to these guys and I can learn from them. And I got into the program, the financial crisis started to unravel. And one day I walked in the office, seen everybody stressed out, and I just seen the look on their face in hearing conversations. Some clients wanted to cry, some advisors wanted to cry, and told myself, again, it was a reminder of me growing up and not having, but I also didn't want to experience that for my clients or for myself. So I made it a point to say, hey, what can I do to learn about managing risk? Because everybody wants to make money, but what about the opposite side, right? That's the more difficult side, the preservation side in volatile times. So I put all my attention to learning about how to manage risk because the one thing I did learn at a young age, coming from the quote, humble beginnings, was if you can learn how to be a resource for people, you will never be without. So I always try to just make a niche for myself. And one of them was risk management. And I noticed that many people in this space don't know anything about managing risk. That was more for the hedge funds and the private equity firms and the regular advisor. They didn't have much information about it other than diversification, which is free. That's the only free lunch in equity markets is diversification. So that's how I came about this business and spent time there and a couple other large financial institutions. And then eventually went to be independent. And that's where I met you, Brad, with Pat. And since then, that's what led us to be here and have a Sage Planning Solutions podcast. And I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We all have very similar upbringings. And I just wonder what is about going through that experience as young children that drove us all to this business and brought us together. So, we've known each other for a long time. And so, Pat, why don't you share with us how Sage came about and what we're doing here?
Sage was actually forged out of experiences that we collectively had working for different banks, different wirehouses, brokerage firms, and a lot of those experiences, let's be honest, it was blunt force trauma. We realized, wow, we are not allowed really to serve clients' needs. Well, here's the thing. These clients, you get so close with them and you can get so tight that you had meals at their family table and you've gone to celebrate life events with them. And you're the one they call when someone gets sick because this has to get fixed and we need you to do it. And so when you're then working for an institution, a large tens of thousands of, employees institution, and they pigeonhole you as Salesforce, as part of the Salesforce, you can do a lot of sort of moving laterally to try to make it work for your clients. But at the end of the day, when they say things like, hey, we're going to penalize you if you do that. Well, here's my rationale. I want to do it because if this happens, the client has this and need this money. Hey, listen, the firm has to make money. We need you to guide them this way. You'll be compensated for that. And then there's the client. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And that was never told to me, but I'm trying to be funny. But it's harsh when you see that what you're allowed to do is misaligned with what the client needs to do, wants to do. So the reason that we formed Sage Planning Solutions is this started, you guys remember how this thing started. We started talking about it one day and next thing you know, 9 months later, I feel like we talked to every single different small independent shop on the street. We left no stone unturned because we wanted to set up a place where financial professionals who wanted to act as a fiduciary could come and work and not have some middle manager with a clipboard coming into their office saying, we need you to sell more home equity lines of credit, right? Also, we want the independents to be able to go to our clients and based on the wherewithal that here are our needs, here's what we need to get done. We could say, here's the absolute best tool, here's the best advice as we perceive it, here's the best planning. And it doesn't have to be a solution, one of the very few solutions that are available off the shelf at a product channel. All right, so who are we picking on here? Let's name names. God bless them, but a lot of our friends and colleagues that work at banks, they're only allowed to do so much. A lot of our friends and colleagues that work for the big institutions, that I used to, let's name names like Smith Barney or Merrill Lynch. There's only so much they're really going to let you do. So when a client would say, hey, this is really important to me, someone's taking a hit if you're going to do the right thing. And we've all experienced that. So we'll tell them, okay, here's what we're going to do. And then when you try to pass it through middle management, they're going to say, well, what are you doing this for? Right? So someone's taking a hit in there somewhere. And we always just sort of felt, hey, if a client is going to get punished with back talk, loads of paperwork, and you're going to have to sign your life away. Now who's serving who? Ultimately, we're here working for you quietly in the background for years. And that's what we value. And I think that's one of the reasons that the three of us have really sort of glommed on to each other in terms of like a forward-leaning vision. Because if our clients are happy with us, we're pretty happy guys, right? If our clients are in pain because something's happening out there, either in their lives individually or in the world of investments collectively, guess what? We are too. We're sympathetic in that way. And they don't need us to go down the sympathy hole with them. What they need is for us to do the math. They need for us to be clear-eyed, and they need us to help them through difficult situations. So the reason that we created Sage Planning Solutions is we wanted something where everything was in alignment for how can we make the practice where we could run the kind of practice management that we want, where the clients are going to get what we would want if we were clients of theirs. And I think that's what it really kind of came down to for me is, if I was going to be a client of this place, what would I want it to look like and feel like? And guess what? We don't have every single answer out there, but we've been around a long time and we know what the competition is. And what we have now is a wonderful thing.
I agree. I think the biggest element that we have working in our favor is the team atmosphere. And I know that's probably a term that's overly used, but we don't need another Pat, Dominic, or Brad. And we all have our own specialties. But I think as an ensemble, it makes the most sense. We can get a significant amount more things done, and we're more efficient because we get to focus on the things that we're passionate about versus focusing on things that are something we're not great at. So those are things that we can delegate versus not being able to focus on things. Thanks for joining us on this Prelude. If you enjoyed our conversation, please don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Sage Planning Solutions podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. If you want more information, visit our website at sageplanningsolutions.com.